Hey guys, so today's video is going to be my review on the new Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet palette. I also filmed 3 different looks using this, so stay tuned until the end of the video if you want to see how the shadows actually apply. I did the look that I'm wearing today, a little bit more of a soft pastel look with the shade Lucid, which is kind of like a transforming shade, and then more of a smoky neutral look as well. Urban Decay did send me this palette in the mail as PR, but this video is not sponsored. I was actually planning on picking this up myself because I do love purple eyeshadow so much, so I'm always up for trying a new purple themed palette. So this palette is available now at Sephora. You can also get it directly from the Urban Decay website, and it's coming soon to Ulta. I'll link it below if you guys want to check it out yourself. The packaging is, of course, very beautiful. It looks like the other updated Urban Decay palettes, like Naked Heat, Naked Cherry, Naked Honey. It comes in just like a sleek case, and I just think the design on the front is really gorgeous. There are 12 different shadows, and there are quite a few different shades within this palette. So there are some warm, peachy golden tones, a couple of neutrals, and then the second half of the palette just contains a bunch of different purple shadows. When I first saw the promo photos, I didn't feel like the warm, peachy neutrals fit in well with the purple shades. I loved the second half of the palette, but if I was designing it myself, I probably would have included some pink or mauve tones in the first half of the palette to pair with the second half of the palette, but I do feel like it kind of works. It's a very interesting color combination that I wouldn't have put together, but because there are so many different shades, you can get quite a few looks out of just this one palette. So let me do some swatches for you guys. There are 3 matte shadows in here. The rest are kind of like shimmer or satin shadows. There aren't a lot of true intense metallics. I would say overall they're a little bit more satiny and just slightly shimmery. There are a couple of shades in here that work well as topper shadows that don't have really pigmented bases, but they look nice layered on top of other shadows. But I do feel like this palette would have benefited from maybe 1 or 2 deeper purple matte shadows, because I find that it's hard to get a really intense look without having those shades within the palette. You can, of course, place some of the deeper purples in the crease or the outer corner, but they just don't build as well as like deep matte shadows typically do. So that would have been nice to see. Otherwise, the 3 matte shadows in here are pretty light. And if you are someone who feels like you need a lot of matte shadows in one palette to make it complete, this is not going to be the palette for you. The palette does come with a dual-ended brush, and typically I just kind of disregard the brushes that come within palettes, and I don't know why, because sometimes they're good, but I just feel like I have my go-to brushes. I have been reaching for this brush so much every single time I use the palette, and I've been using the palette for over a week at this point, but the fluffy crease brush is perfect for blending shadow into your crease as a transition, and then the pencil brush is great on the lower lash line and the outer corner, and it really is a high quality brush that performs very well, so I do feel like this adds to the value of the palette as a whole. So as for the actual quality of this palette, it performs just like you would expect the Naked palettes to perform like. I think at this point they've released, what, maybe like 8 or 9 Naked palettes, and in my opinion, the majority of them perform very similarly. And I think they're great for someone who doesn't want to spend a ton of time on their eyeshadow. The matte shadows are pretty powdery, but they do blend out very, very well. You're not going to build them up to be super intense on the eyes, especially with this palette, because the 3 matte shadows in the palette are definitely on the lighter side. In fact, if you have a medium, tan, deeper dark skin tone, I don't think those lighter shades are even going to work very well for you. You'll probably get a better idea when I do the actual application. And then the shimmer shadows and the satin shadows, again, they're very light shimmers. So they do give you a pretty wash of color, but they're not going to be super intense or really vibrant. Even if you wet your brush, they aren't going to be like the most rich pigmented shadows you've ever seen, like Natasha Denona or Juvia's Place or maybe even ColourPop, but they're nice if you want just like a wash of color. I think these updated Urban Decay Naked palettes, like the more colorful ones, are a great addition to your collection if you're someone who doesn't typically wear a lot of colorful eyeshadows, but you kind of want to move in that direction because they make more colorful tones a little bit more approachable. Urban Decay's Naked Heat makes warm tones so simple. Naked Cherry makes like pink and burgundies really easy to work with, and I do think this one kind of brings purples to people who might be a little bit intimidated by really intense, vibrant purples. But I think the issue is Urban Decay is not really marketing this palette in that way. They're kind of calling it like a super intense, vibrant palette, and I just don't find that to be the case. I think if you purchase this knowing it's going to be a little bit softer and you're not going to get the most intense, vibrant looks out of it, then I don't think you will be disappointed. But if you purchase this hoping for the pigmentation of Juvia's Place or Natasha Denona, you'll definitely be disappointed. This is a purple palette for someone who doesn't wear a lot of purples, for someone who kind of wants like a pretty wash of color all over the eyes, or someone who wants to incorporate a pop of purple every once in a while. It's not for those of you who love purples and have a lot of options in your collection, because truthfully, you'll probably have shades like these, or honestly shades that perform a lot better from different brands. The only purple palettes in my collection I really wanted to compare to this Urban Decay palette were from ColourPop. So ColourPop has these two palettes. These are $12 each. They each come with 9 shadows. So you could buy one palette and get 9 nice purple shadows, or you could buy 2 of these for what, $24, which is still half the price of this palette, and have 18 different pink and purple options to choose from. So if purples are truly your goal, this might actually be a better deal for you, but this formula overall tends to be a lot more vibrant than the Urban Decay Naked palette formula. And again, I know not everybody has access to ColourPop or enjoys ColourPop's formula, but if you do, these might be a better choice for you. There aren't exactly any spot-on dupes within these palettes compared to the Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet, but you can definitely get some similar looks. So I want to show you guys the shadows in action so you can see what I'm talking about. I did film 3 different looks for you so you can see what you can do with this palette. I do think it's a pretty palette, and I've been able to create some really fun looks, and I do enjoy using it, so I want to give you guys an idea of what you can create. I have the look that I'm wearing today as the first look. The second one is a little bit of a softer purple look, and I used the shade Lucid. And then the third look is more of a smoky neutral look. I did poke my eye when I filmed that look, so it's a little bit red throughout that entire demo, but I still wanted to include it because I like how the look turned out. But let me share those with you, and then I'll come back and wrap it up with my final thoughts. So I just primed my eyes with the Urban Decay Primer Potion and then set everything into place with a matte shadow. That's how I'll kick off each look. And for this first look, I think I'm going to go for a little bit more of a bold, bright purple look. So I'll take the fluffy side of the brush that the palette came with and start with the shadow hacked and just blend that into my crease. It does blend out really well, so even if you go in with a little bit too much like I did, if you just keep blending, you'll get there eventually. I was watching a couple of reviews yesterday, and I feel like this shade pulls a little bit more pink on me than it does in some of the other reviews that I was watching. On some people, I feel like it pulls a little bit more neutral. So it's kind of one of those shades that I feel like can go either way, but on me, I definitely get a little bit more of like a rosy vibe. And then I'll do the same thing on the other eye. I'll probably just show you guys what I'm doing on my right eye so I can save a little bit of time. Next, I'm going to take the shade Warning, which is a really pretty warm purpley pink. This one has more of a satin finish. Typically, I do prefer to use matte shadows in the crease, and if I do use a satin or a shimmer, I'll start with it on the lid and then blend it up. But because this one doesn't have too many matte purple shadows, I want to show you guys how you can use a satin in the crease. I'm going to take it on this crease brush, and you will get quite a bit of fallout with this shade, so I do recommend just going in with a small amount, or maybe doing your eyes before your base, but I'm just going to lightly blend this one into the crease and build it up slowly. I think satins or metallics or shimmers can look really pretty in the crease. I prefer to kind of pack them on and then blend them up, but I do find that if I use a light hand, there isn't quite as much fallout with them. I do like that they put this color in here because it does have a little bit more of like a bright pink hint to it. Some of the purples in here definitely have more of a blue undertone, and this one is a little bit more blue based, but if I want to do like a really colorful purple look, this is really nice to use. Next, I'm going to take the shade Cyberpunk, and I'm going to start with it on my finger and just really pack that onto the lid. Again, this is a little bit more of a satin rather than a true metallic. The majority of the shadows in here are a little bit softer than what I typically go for, especially the metallic finishes. But if you just want more of like a soft wash of color, this is a really pretty color. So I'm just going to go in with the same shade on a brush and just really pack that onto the lid. I'm not going to wet the brush. I just want to make sure I got the whole lid covered really well. And then I'm just going to take that crease brush that I've been using and a tiny amount of the purple and just lightly blend out the edges. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of the shade VR, which I think works best as a topper shade because it's very, very glittery, really shimmery and pretty. And I'm just going to pat that right over the lid. This one does have like a little bit of a reddish base to it, but if you layer it on top of purple shadow, all you really see is like that sparkle. If you just place the shade VR on top of like your bare lid, you probably wouldn't think that it's anything special, but I do think it is a nice touch to kind of transform a couple of those maybe like underwhelming satin shadows. So I'll be using the Urban Decay Perversion liquid liner probably for all three of my looks. I'll be right back and then I'll do the lower lash line. Okay, not my best winged liner application, but we're just going to go with it. So for the lower lash line, I think I'll kind of do the same thing. I'll start with the shade Warning and just lightly blend that on the lower lash line to add that hint of pink. And then I'll go in with the darker shade once this is blended out. I'm just going to take a little bit of the Urban Decay 24/7 Glide On Eye Pencil in the shade Vice and just run that on my waterline. Not too much, just a little bit to kind of bring some more purple to this look. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of the shade Cyberpunk, which is the color that I put all over the lid, and just blend that on the lower lash line as well, and just kind of smudge out that liner a little bit. And then to finish things up, I'm just going to take a little bit of the shade Trippin' and use that to highlight the brow bone, and then also use that on the inner corner as well. And then I'll finish off with mascara. I'll probably just use the same one for all three looks. This is the Covergirl Exhibitionist Uncensored. So this is the first look. It's a little bit more of a pinky purple look, which is what I typically love to wear when I'm wearing purples. I love mixing like pinks and purples together, so it's kind of nice that you can get a little bit more of a pinky vibe out of this palette. So I hope you guys enjoyed this first look. For the lip, I'm just wearing the Kaleidos Lucid lip in the shade Mesmerize. And again, I love that shade VR all over the lid because it just adds some sparkle. A lot of the shimmer shadows in here don't have a lot of sparkle to them. They're a little bit more soft and satiny, which is nice because you can wear them in the crease on the lower lash line, but I love that topper shade just to add a little something extra. Okay, so for this look, I'm going to do more of a light purple look, and I do want to incorporate the shade Lucid, which is really gorgeous. It has like this greenish bluish shift over it, so I might focus that on the inner corner or all over the lid. We'll just kind of see how it goes. I'm going to take the fluffy side of the brush that came with the palette and start with the shade Optimized and blend that into the crease and then also up as a transition color. This shade is a little bit powdery, but it's a really pretty soft pastel lavender. It looks great if you just kind of blend it out all over the eye. You can pack it on, but I like to use it more as a crease or transition color. It does blend out really nicely, but it's definitely on the lighter side. You can't really build this one up to be too intense. Next, I'm going to take the shade Euphoric and just place this all over the lid. And then I'm going to kind of soften the edges and kind of blend it up into the crease. This is definitely one of my favorite shades in the palette. I just love the actual color, and it has a little bit of blue to it. So if you kind of, look down or turn your head, you can kind of see that really pretty blue shift. And the texture is just a really pretty soft satin, so it goes on really nicely with your finger. And then I'm just going to take the fluffy brush and kind of blend out the edges again. I know some people can be intimidated by placing shimmers or metallics in the crease, but because some of these shades are more on like the soft satin side, they do blend really nicely in the crease. And it's kind of a nice starting point if you're looking to try shimmers and metallics in the crease because they're really easy to work with if you're using them for that purpose. If you do like a lighter look overall, you could totally stop there, but I am going to take a little bit of the shade Purple Dust on the pencil side of this brush and just kind of blend that in the outer corner just to add a little bit more definition. I don't really want this look to be too intense, so I really am just going to take a small amount and kind of work that in the outer corner just to define things a little bit more. And then I'm just going to use the fluffy side and kind of blend that out and diffuse it a little bit. And then I think I will go back in with the shade Euphoric and just kind of go right over the area where those two shades meet. I do feel like a matte purple would have really come in handy for kind of darkening up the outer corner. It would be nice because sometimes when you work with more of a shimmer or a metallic, you have to work to really build up that shimmer if you want more of an intense look. So I just find that overall I don't get super like deep vampy looks with this palette, but that can be nice if you don't prefer really intense looks overall. Okay, so I am going to go in with the shade Lucid, and I think I'm going to focus this on like the inner third of the lid. This color comes off a little bit different depending on what type of shadow you layer it onto, but if you layer it onto purple, you kind of get like a really pretty aqua type of look. And then this is the like point in the eyeshadow look where I just kind of go back and forth until I'm happy with how it looks. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the purple and go back over the center And then I might take a little bit more of the shade Lucid and layer that back up. It's just kind of like a creative process. So you just keep going until you think it looks good. But I think layering those two shades back and forth just gives a little bit more of a blended appearance overall when you're done. So I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to take the Urban Decay Perversion liquid liner, do winged liner, and then kind of clean up the lower lash line. And then I'll be right back to blend shadow onto the lower lash line. For the lower lash line, I'm just going to start with the shade Euphoric and lightly blend that into the lower lash line. I think I'm going to keep the lower lash line a little bit lighter. I have this really pretty eyeliner from Urban Decay that has a little bit of like a purple bluish hint to it. So this is going to work really well in the waterline. And then I'm just going to take a little bit on the lower lash line, not too much, just to kind of define it a little bit more. And then I'm just going to go back in with the shade Lucid and really pack that on the inner corner just to add like a fun, bright pop of color. Actually, I'm going to tone that down just a little bit with the shade Trippin'. I do like it, I just don't want it to be the main focus of the look. And then I'm also going to use Trippin' on the brow bone. So to finish off the look, I just applied the CoverGirl Exhibitionist Uncensored Mascara on the top and bottom lashes. And then for the lips, I'm wearing the Christian Audette Mel Thompson collab. So I have the lip liner in the shade Kitten and then the lipstick in the shade Beauty. So this is how the final look turned out. I do think that Lucid is a really fun shade to have in the palette because it's kind of like a transforming shade. So you can use it all over the lid, on the inner corner, and if you layer it on top of different shadows, it always looks a little bit different. So I do think it is a fun option to add like a bright pop of color. Obviously there are colorful purple shades, but if you want to switch it up, I kind of like how it gives like a greenish bluish hint. So I definitely wanted to do more of a neutral look with this palette for one of the looks. Because this palette is half neutral and half purple, I wanted to show you guys one of my favorite looks using the neutral tones in here and show you that you can do more of an everyday look or even more of a smoky look just using the neutrals and skipping over the purples. So I'm going to take the fluffy side of the brush that came with the palette and then take the shadow hacked and blend that into my crease and then up as a transition color. The look that I'm doing today definitely gives me like Naked 2 palette vibes. I loved that palette so much. I don't have mine because it did expire maybe like a year or two ago, but there are some really pretty rosy tones in there and I think they just blend really beautifully with the golds. So I do feel like this look is similar to something you could get with the Naked 2. Just going to take a little bit of a fluffier brush and continue to blend it out as more of a transition color. I just have a little bit of the product on here, but not too much. So I'm going to take the pencil side of this brush and go in with the shade Digital, which is the deepest shade in here. It's kind of like a cooler toned charcoal brown. And I'm just going to blend that into the outer corner and also the inner corner because we're going to do a little bit more of like a spotlight halo eye. This does have a little bit more of a satin finish to it, so it is really easy to blend out, but this is a pretty precise pencil brush, so I'm really going to focus it in the corner and then I'll go in and blend it out. I kind of like this shade a little bit better than like a deep matte black. I do think that would have been nice to work with, especially with the purple tones, because you could do something really smoky and intense. But I just find that this is a little bit easier to work with. I don't typically work with like true black shadows because I feel like they can be a little bit difficult and honestly kind of intimidating. But this softer satin color just blends well, and if you just go in with a little bit at a time, it's not too intense. I'm just going to take a little bit of a fluffier brush and just kind of blend that out. And then I might build it up a little bit more. We'll see how it looks after I blend it. I'm just kind of going for more of like a softer smoky eye. I am going to add just a little bit more to darken things up, maybe bring it into the center just a little bit more as well. And then I'm just going to go in with that fluffy brush and blend everything together as well. I'm going to leave it here for now and do the other eye, and then I'll be right back and we can add the shimmer all over the lid. I am just going to go in with the shade Dazed on my finger and focus that right in the center of the lid. I do feel like this shade is best applied with your finger. That's typically how I like to apply my shimmer or metallic shades. But if you just kind of lightly pat it on, it looks so pretty. And there's something about this shade that just kind of has like a wet look to it. It's also really pretty if you like skip this deeper shade in the outer and inner corners and just go in with this on top of the transition color. Now, that's a little bit more of like a natural everyday look, especially for summer. I think that's really pretty too. But I don't know, I just kind of like this on top of the smokier shade. Okay, I just poked my eye, so I'm going to give that a second to calm down, and then once it does, I'm just going to apply winged liner, and I'm going to be using the Urban Decay Perversion Waterproof Liquid Liner, and then I'll be right back. I'm going to take the shade Hacked and blend that on the lower lash line. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of the shade Digital, not too much, and just blend that on the lower lash line as well. So for eyeliner, I'm going to take the shade Scorch, which is a really pretty bronzy gold. I'm going to place that on the waterline and then a little bit on the lower lash line and just blend it out. Okay, I think my eye is pretty much back to normal. So this is the final look. I just paired it with a little bit of a deeper lip. I think it just looks really pretty with like a deep vampy lip because it is a little bit more of like a smoky look, but you could totally go in with a nude lip. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what you could do with some of the more neutral tones. If you wanted to go a little bit lighter, you could totally skip the deeper shade in the inner and outer corner. And I think that this peachy gold would look great with the transition color as well. I just paired it with more of like a cool toned, deeper lip. This is the Dose of Colors liquid lipstick in the shade Desert Suede. So to wrap it up and share my final thoughts on this palette, I do think it's a really gorgeous palette and I've been able to create a lot of different looks using it. It's not the highest quality palette that I've tried, but it does perform how I would expect it to perform, just like a Naked palette. I think the reason this is getting some negative reviews is because the expectations for this palette are a little bit off, and I think that's because Urban Decay is marketing it as this really intense, vibrant purple palette. They have gorgeous photos, beautiful videos and tutorials, but when it comes down to it, it's still a Naked palette, and even though it's not neutral like the original Naked palettes, the formula is still the same. So any of the updated Naked palettes are like toned down versions of those colors. So if you're interested in this palette, keep that in mind. Going into it, you're not going to get intense pigmentation. You're not going to get super vibrant looks, but it's still beautiful and it's still fun to play with if you are going for a softer vibe overall. So $49 to me is pretty expensive for what you get because I usually like to pay more for higher pigmentation, but that's just my personal preference. If you want to pay a little bit more for a softer formula, this might be worth it to you. If I lost this palette or I broke it, I wouldn't run out and repurchase it for $49, but if it goes on sale like the Naked palettes do, then I think, it might be worth picking up in that case. So those are my thoughts on the Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet. Hopefully this video wasn't too long. I just wanted to share everything that I've kind of, discovered about this palette over the past week. I will update you guys in a month or two and let you know how I'm still liking it. And of course, at the end of the year, I will do a full ranking video on all of the palettes that I've tried. So we'll see where this one ends up. But if you guys try this palette, let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.